A Toronto man is facing 29 charges following a hate crime investigation. One of the rare charges he's facing, advocating genocide, in this case against the Jewish community. Brittany Billette has been looking into this story. And Brittany, what have you learned?
Well, Calda, police say Amir Avari Azar, a 32-year-old man, was arrested and charged. Police didn't release a photo of him, but they did put out a news release. They say much of what he's accused of was motivated by hatred towards the Jewish community. The charge sheet is long, and it includes two rare charges: willful promotion of hatred and advocating genocide, and then other charges, including 5 counts of arson and 3 counts of possessing a restricted or prohibited firearm. And there are more charges on top of that, of course. Investigators with the Hate Crime Unit say these incidents happened between late April of last year and early January of this year. They add that because of a court-imposed publication ban, they couldn't provide many details, but they did release a video statement.
Amir Arvahi Azar was arrested earlier this year on January the 11th. The charges include public incitement of hatred. They also include advocating genocide and willful promotion of hatred, which both require the consent of the Ministry of the Attorney General. I would like to thank all of our members who worked tirelessly on this investigation over the span of many months. We know that these charges are very serious and that people are concerned. I want to assure everyone that we will continue to do everything we can to keep our communities safe.
Community members are already reacting to this investigation. Earlier today, we spoke to the Centre for Israel and Jewish Affairs. In a statement, its Ontario VP said, "We are encouraged to see law enforcement and Crown prosecutors upholding the rule of law. In a time of rising anti-Semitism and hate, it is essential that authorities demonstrate zero tolerance for those who cross the line into criminal conduct."
Now, Brittany, yes, some very serious charges he's facing. Let's go back to these two: willful promotion of hatred and advocating genocide. Now, just how rare are these?
Well, they're very uncommon, I'm told, especially since they require approval from the Attorney General. Earlier today, I spoke to Barbara Perry, a global hate crime expert, for some insights. She said those charges require a high bar, not only to apply them, but to find someone guilty.
One study internal to the government found that between 2010 and 2020, only 81 cases came before the courts, and they involved about 300 charges. So when they are invoked, it tends to be very serious. Even those cases that make it to the court, very few are successful. So in only 43% of those 81 cases I mentioned earlier was there a guilty verdict. 38% of the charges were withdrawn or were dismissed. So, both Crowns and law enforcement are acknowledging and recognizing that they've got, an uphill battle on their hands. So that suggests to me, again, that the language is very clear and very blatant, that it did encourage violence towards the community intended to erase the community, genocide, and that it was very public.
Again, we don't have details about the alleged incidents, and those charges haven't been tested in court yet. But police say Azar was released on bail with conditions. Those include house arrest and an ankle monitor. According to court documents, his next court appearance is scheduled for April 28th. Calda.
All right, thanks so much, Brittany. Our Brittany Billette in the newsroom tonight. Hamilton police have identified the victim of a fatal stabbing over the weekend.
The victim of the stabbing succumbed to their injuries, and the homicide unit was called in to continue the investigation. Police have identified the stabbing victim as 74-year-old Charles James Francis Jouvence, but his friends and family called him Jacques.
Police were called to the area of Hunter Street East and Spring Street around 3:45 Sunday afternoon. When officers arrived, they found the 74-year-old victim on the porch of his house, suffering from stab wounds. He was taken to hospital where he later died. The SIU has also been called in to investigate after an interaction between police and the suspect resulted in the suspect getting injured. Police say they found a man inside the victim's home armed with an edged weapon, which led to one officer discharging their firearm, hitting the suspect, who remains in hospital in life-threatening condition tonight. A second child has died after a house fire in Oshawa last week that also claimed the lives of her mother and sister. The fire broke out last Wednesday. When emergency crews arrived, they found the 46-year-old father outside. Now, he was taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries but is expected to survive. A woman and a 9-year-old girl were found inside and taken to hospital where they were pronounced dead. The other daughter, a 12-year-old, was also sent to hospital but died this morning. An investigation into the cause of the fire continues, but Durham police say they do not believe it to be arson. Canada's new Prime Minister is on his first international trip 3 days after taking office. Mark Carney is looking to bolster relations with Europe amid the trade war with the U.S. He began the day in Paris before heading to Britain, including a visit with King Charles.
Prime Minister of Canada, Your Majesty. Your Majesty.
The focus for the talks was security, trade, and economic ties with Europe. Carney's packed day included a meeting with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron. Carney spoke about the need to strengthen ties with what he calls Canada's reliable allies. And with a trade war souring long-standing relations with the U.S., more Canadians are wondering if the $19 billion purchase of American-built F-35 fighter jets can be stopped. Payment for the first 16 jets out of 88 has already been made. Mark Carney says his government is exploring potential alternatives.
Given the geopolitical environment, given the fact that there are options, given the need for value for money, given the possibility of having substantial production of alternative aircraft in Canada, as opposed to sending, as we have been, on average 80 cents of every dollar to the United States, it's prudent and in the interest of Canada to review those options. And that's what that's the process that the Defence Minister has initiated.
Toronto is also taking action. Today, Mayor Olivia Chow unveiled the city's strategy to fight against Trump's tariffs, focusing on supports for local businesses and banning U.S.-based suppliers from bidding on city contracts. Lane Harrison has the details.
Standing beneath a 12-meter Canadian flag dangling between two fire trucks, Mayor Olivia Chow sharing how Toronto fits into a Team Canada response today.
U.S.-based suppliers will no longer be able to bid on city contracts. Businesses who have been most impacted by U.S. tariff must be supported.
Chow promised a U.S. procurement ban was coming earlier this month, and CBC Toronto wanted to see how big an impact that would really have. An analysis of competitive contracts awarded by the city over the last 2 years found a total ban on American companies would impact about $210.4 million in procurement, about 6% of the total. But we took a harder line than the city actually will, because we counted Canadian subsidiaries of American companies as American, something the city won't be doing if the company has offices here and if more than 70% of the employees fulfilling the contract are Canadian. Those are important details because almost every American company Toronto has procured from has a Canadian subsidiary. So it's unclear how many companies this will actually impact. Plus, the city can still procure from American companies if it's in its best interest.
This is a period of transition. It's less about cost per se, it's more about if we can actually find a more local supplier. So that ability to potentially still have to procure from other places, including the U.S., is about the transition period we're in.
Johnson says Toronto will work with other municipalities to see how they can shift away from American procurement together. And the city will look to help impacted businesses by deferring taxes for industrial property owners who can demonstrate they've been hurt by the trade war.
We will stand united as proud Canadians, and Toronto will emerge stronger than ever.
The mayor feeling the patriotism that's spread across the country and becoming the latest leader to visit an American network Monday morning.
We're very resilient, we're very united, and we are strong.
The mayor's plan will head to Executive Committee Wednesday before going in front of Council for final approval next week. Lane Harrison, CBC News, Toronto.
Windsor's police chief is under fire tonight for some deeply insensitive and racist comments he was found to have made. An internal investigation is uncovering exactly what was said by the chief. CBC's Jason Vio has the story.
An internal investigation into allegations that Windsor's police chief made several racist remarks is finished, and I've obtained and verified an internal document that shows those claims were found to be true. According to the internal summary, the investigator found Chief Jason Belair believed it was, quote, a safe space when he made those comments. Therefore, all of this does not amount to a poisoned work environment. The summary doesn't indicate what allegations were substantiated. Now, I first obtained a detailed list of those allegations through a human rights Tribunal of Ontario complaint filed by Ed Armstrong last year. He's an inspector, the first Black officer to reach that rank. In his human rights complaint, he indicated he also filed an internal one, which we now know has been substantiated. Here's what Armstrong said Belair told him while the two were at work, according to his human rights complaint. Belair asked him to use his black magic to ease criticism of a local university professor, referred to her as a black radical, suggested there is telepathic communication among black people, said he preferred whiter things, mentioned needing a black friend to accompany him to certain events. Armstrong also said Belair made a joke about black people and bananas. Armstrong hasn't responded to CBC News. Belair also has not returned our calls or emails. When asked in an email to confirm whether the allegations against Belair were substantiated, Windsor Police spokesperson Gary Francoeur said the information in your message is not entirely accurate. However, as the matter is still before the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario, we cannot comment further at this time. But he refused to clarify what information he claims to be not entirely accurate. Now that the allegations have been substantiated, the Windsor Police Association tells CBC News it's wondering how the board will hold the chief accountable, but we may never know. When asked about possible consequences, the board administrator says they don't comment on personnel matters. Plus, last month, the chief announced he will be retiring in November, 2 years before the end of his 5-year contract, and he didn't provide a reason for that decision. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
March break may be over, but not every student is back at school. Public health officials are issuing suspensions for thousands of students with out-of-date vaccine records. Sarah McMillan reports.
Inoculation against diseases like tetanus, polio, measles, mumps, and rubella is routine for kids across the country. In Ontario, they're required to attend school unless you have an exemption, but many students are behind.
During the pandemic, we stopped vaccinating completely. We're all concerned about COVID. All our activities are COVID related.
Health units across the province are now trying to catch up, sending reminders to thousands of parents, and in some cases sending out suspension letters if they haven't complied. In Toronto, the health unit sent out more than 18,000 letters for grade 11 students. In nearby Waterloo region, close to 9,000 suspension notices were sent out for elementary students. In Eastern Ontario, where hundreds of letters have been sent out, the Chief Medical Officer of Health says vaccine fatigue is likely a contributing factor.
We've had COVID vaccines, 5-6 doses. And with that, vaccine hesitancy came up. People are now just recovering. There's a lot of mental health issues in young children and school-age kids. We're trying to catch up.
For Jill Promoli, vaccine advocacy is personal. 9 years ago, her 2-year-old son died from the flu.
I think sometimes we don't realize how important it is that we do consider how serious these illnesses can be. And at the end of the day, I want people to have the information that they need so that they can make the best choices they can for their families, because I don't want other families to be in our shoes.
Low vaccine uptake is having consequences right now in Ontario, with a recent measles outbreak spreading through unvaccinated people.
If you talk about the flu, one person gets the flu, and if they might infect 2 people. This with the measles, one person can actually infect 17, 18 people.
While experts stress the importance of vaccination, record-keeping issues could explain some of the apparent low rates.
Many people are still using a yellow piece of paper that they have no idea where it is. It's, in some dresser drawer somewhere collecting dust for decades. And, there's no centralized way to keep track of this.
Still, the system of warnings and suspensions does seem to be working. Toronto Public Health says when it started trying to get 7- and 8-year-olds caught up on vaccines last year, the compliance rate was just 29%. Now, after notices and suspensions, it's up to more than 98%. Sarah McMillan, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. Starting today, more TTC bus riders are being asked to show proof of payment as the transit agency ramps up its crackdown on fare evasion on the city's bus network. Clara Pasica reports.
Here at Keele Station, TTC bus riders are being greeted by fare inspectors and being asked to show proof of payment. This is a new initiative, but it's starting here at Keele Station for bus riders. They're being asked to show that they paid their fare and that the fare they paid was the correct one. We spoke with the TTC spokesperson, Stuart Green, about how it's been going so far.
By and large, they're seeing overwhelming numbers of people who have paid. That's good news. We know there are some people who are chronic non-payers. We've heard a story this morning about someone who their card was tapped and it hadn't been tapped in 1,100 days. So, these are, it's a long period of time to not have paid for transit. These are the people that we're trying to catch.
It's part of the transit agency's crackdown on fare evasion. The TTC says $140 million is lost each year. It's starting today with education and the chance to simply pay your fare if you haven't yet done so. But in the future, those found not having paid for the bus or not paying the right fare could face hundreds of dollars in fines. It's getting mixed reaction here at Keele Station.
I think the funds that we're spending on these fare inspectors would way be better allocated to just making the cost of transit cheaper.
I think it's long overdue. I mean, I watch multiple people daily not pay. You got to keep the TTC running. I use it every day to get where I'm going. And if people don't pay, then I'm going to have a problem getting where I'm going.
Like, my message is just that we need to keep rolling out supports for people to be able to access transit who have, who are the poorest among us.
Inspections were already being carried out at subway stations and on streetcars, which will continue. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Toronto.
With kids back in class after March break, Toronto police are ramping up efforts to keep school zones safe with a campaign to crack down on illegal parking.
As you know, there's going to be more kids out playing, and we just want to ensure that the school bus loading zones are kept clear, crosswalks are kept clear, speeding is down to no speeding around school zones.
Drivers can expect to see strict enforcement on illegal parking in school zones until Friday, with police paying special attention to no stopping zones, crosswalks, and school bus loading areas. Tickets will range from $65 to $120 per offense. In Canada, the most prevalent crime is fraud. This can be in the form of investment fraud or romance scams. Ali Chiasson has more on how you can protect yourself.
Over the last year, Torontonians have lost $72 million after being duped in some sort of scam. But police say it's likely 10 to 20 times higher than that because it's so underreported.
I'm regularly approached by friends and family and people in the street saying, telling me about their fraud incidences, and I always ask them, did you report it? And the answer 9 out of 10 times is always no.
Why? Well, there's a few reasons.
Some people don't believe that the police are able to help them. They believe the money is gone, so why report it to the police?
Money moves so fast online, and crypto is notoriously hard to trace, making it admittedly hard for police to get the victim's money back.
The fraudsters aren't even here. They're not within Toronto. They're not even within Canada. They're across the planet. So that makes it very exceptionally challenging for us to locate them and bring them to justice.
But the more people report, the more patterns arise, aiding the police investigation to try and track down these cells of fraudsters.
People are on their way to work.
And that's what Detective David Coffey was here at Union Station talking to commuters about today.
What's the advisory to put out there to folks today?
It's really, I just wish people would think, just take more time to think. When the messages come in saying, you're going to be deported, or you're going to be arrested, or we're going to seize your house, or you're going to lose your driver's license, anything like that, that is a key red flag. Most of the things that come into our phones and through our computers, if there's any sorts of urgency, or if there's any requests for information or money, 99.9% of that is going to be fraud. Verify, verify, verify.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Colette joins us now with a check on the forecast. And Colette, not as warm today, but also not as wet.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a turnaround today, Kelda. I mean, yesterday there were some records being set, and even just in Toronto, very pleasant and warm, 17 degrees. So a little cooler, especially this morning, 7 a.m. Oshawa was at -4, Toronto at -2. So it took a little time to get going, especially with some of the cloud cover that was in place. As that continued to clear to the east, temperatures warmed up, and by around 3 o'clock, actually, this is 4, but we were up to about 5 degrees. So it did warm up, but it gets milder still. Why? Well, first of all, let's just show you this trough here in the jet stream. That's that area really that helped to enhance the 3 days of severe weather outbreaks in the U.S. But looking further to the west, we get into this ridge, and this ridge is some milder air that's going to be pushing in. And at least for a couple of days, it will continue with some sunshine. So today and tomorrow, and then more clouds come in on Wednesday, and things start to kind of change over a little bit midweek. But through the overnight hours, we don't have to deal with any active weather. And tomorrow we'll start off with sunshine, and then into the GTA, just getting a few clouds into the afternoon hours, a little more significant into southwestern Ontario as the cloud cover builds. But as we push into Wednesday, all around the Golden Horseshoe and beyond, we get into more cloud cover and just some sunny breaks. And it is by Wednesday night that some showers will start to move in, and we'll have those into Thursday, our first official day of spring, as that system comes through. But of course, those showers hopefully bringing spring flowers, right? I know we're not into April and May yet, but that's what we can hope for with the rain showers coming our way. So overnight temperatures tonight, we are still going to slip below freezing, okay? So -1. The winds won't be very strong tomorrow morning, but they're kind of enough to make it feel like -5. The temperature, in fact, the low for southwestern Ontario, you're going to hit that just after kind of midnight, and then actually your temperature will be climbing as you head towards those early morning hours. So here we are for Toronto. How about tomorrow with just a few fair weather clouds as the day wears on? A high of 12 degrees. Very pleasant because of those winds shifting back around to a southerly direction today from the north, and that's why we had the cooler readings. After Tuesday, we get into Wednesday. Those clouds roll in, but 15 degrees for that daytime high. Then showers Wednesday night into Thursday, still relatively mild for that first day of spring. It comes in at 5:01 a.m., by the way, and then sun back for Friday.
Thanks so much, Colette. And that's our show for you tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great night, everyone.